Are we ready online? Can you, so Muhammad Saati, can you check if online or we can start? Are we streaming? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for being here, and it's really my pleasure and honor to moderate this session for Islamic Development Bank and its associated companies. My name is Muhammad Rushdi, Senior Consultant at IFC and founder of FinTech Bazaar. I think it's great to moderate such a panel, and for Islamic Development Bank, has been, for decades, contributing to the continuous economic growth of its member countries and improving the lives of the communities it serves by delivering impact scale and promoting trade and investments, across 57 OIC member countries, especially in times of market uncertainty and unstable economic conditions. The goal has been pursued by ISDB Group, specifically in close cooperation with its private sector entities, namely the Islamic Corporation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ICIEC, the Islamic Corporation of Development of the Private Sector, ICD, and the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, ITFC. In this context, the ISDB Group private sector entities are introducing the panel session on strengthening trade and investment in OIC member countries. To further shed light on the role of ISDB Group in supporting OIC member countries, trade, investment, and the process, especially in the volatile market and unstable economic ecosystems. This event, as you can see, is hosted here in the Egyptian pavilion as a road show to the upcoming private sector forum during the Islamic Development Bank Group annual meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, which is scheduled to be held on 1 to 4th of June 2022, in conjunction with the annual meetings group business annual meetings, the ISB Group private sector entities, IEC, ICD, ITFC, in coordination with ISDB Group Business Forum, Thika. While organize the private sector forum, the main objective of the private sector forum is to provide unique platform to network and establish business relations and partnership with other leading representatives and stakeholders for business community in order to share their related experiences, success stories, best practices, while jointly exploring investment and trade opportunities offered by OIC member countries. Furthermore, to connect business communities in member countries by arranging parallel B2B and B2G scheduled meeting. And we are here today to listen to the expert speakers from the ISB Group private sector entities, the three entities we mentioned right now. We'll have right now a 10 minutes presentation for each member company for the ISB investor companies. And this will be followed by interactive panel Q&A between the three of them and myself. And then we'll end by a Q&A. So please, encourage you and people as well, online to think about questions and throw out questions. We need to make it interactive as much as we can. So please make sure that you are putting your questions here or online as well. I would like to ask the first company, I think Rafael, you will just present to us. Please introduce yourself first, then start and work. Please, thank you. I'm sorry, just we have a video. We don't have a video before we start the presentation. Sorry about that. So can we have the video, then we'll start the presentation of the video.
The pandemic has changed our world, forcing an unprecedented response from influential organizations around the world. One such organization is the Islamic Development Bank, ISDB. In April 2020, our board of executive directors approved $2.3 billion for our strategic preparedness and response program, putting member countries back on the path towards economic recovery in a strategy we call 3 Rs: respond, restore, and restart. The ISDB Group's private sector entities have been pivotal in delivering this program and supporting those most in need within our member countries. The Islamic Corporation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ISIC, has worked tirelessly to make its full suite of insurance solutions available, ensuring supply chains are intact and the health and livelihoods of citizens in our member countries are protected. ISIC provided insurance coverage amounting to $643 million to support the efforts of member countries in combating the pandemic. ISIC collaborated with Islamic Development Bank (ISDB) to create the COVID-19 Guarantee Facility (CGF) and the ISIC ISFD COVID-19 Emergency Response Initiative (ICERI) to sustain core strategic value chains, including crucial supplies to the healthcare and food sectors, as well as vaccine procurement. Matching these incredible endeavors has been the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, who has allocated $250 million to help in the fight against COVID-19, directed in key areas. Working closely with over 100 local and regional financial institutions and providing lines of finance to provide access to funding for SMEs and support private sector businesses. Extending infrastructure financing to provide critical support for the healthcare, energy and agribusiness sectors, and developing an emergency plan to provide support for our investee companies and other financial institutions. The International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, ITFC, as part of its Rapid Response Initiative, provided $605 million trade financing to support key sectors of OIC member countries. ITFC also designed trade development and technical assistance programs to support key sectors such as the food security and health resilience. The ITFC has made an additional $387 million available to local banks in their efforts to support the recovery of SMEs and private sector clients. While we can take pride in our response, we know this is only the beginning. We remain unwavering in our dedication to safeguarding the people of our member countries in the face of the pandemic and supporting their sustained success for generations to come.
Thank you very much. Now we'll ask Mr. Rafael from ISIC just to come please just to presentation. Thank you.
So assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope you and your loved ones are safe in this particular context of the pandemic. And my name is Rafael Fofana. I work in the underwriting department in ISIC and I'm based here in Dubai in the UAE. So it's in this context of the COVID-19 pandemic that today we will showcase how ISIC tools, risk mitigation tools and credit enhancement tools are contributing actually to alleviate poverty and to help our member countries go through these difficult times in a peaceful manner. So the Islamic Corporation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit is a multilateral institution created almost 20 years ago. It's owned by the ISDB. So like I was saying, it has been created almost 28 years ago. It's owned by the ISDB and by 48 OIC member countries. Spread across various regions. I will show that later. And we are rated AA3 by Moody's, and we are part of prestigious international organizations like the Amman Union and the Bern Union, which are export credit international organizations. And all our products are Sharia compliant, and we have an authorized capital of around 660 million, US dollars. So like I was saying, ISIC is spread across various continents. Our member countries are all OIC member countries. Those countries are mainly located in MENA, the MENA region, and Sub-Saharan Africa, but we have several countries in Asia as well, and also newcomers in the CIS region, Central Asia, like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, where we are starting to be very active. So since inception, these are the figures of ISIC. We've supported almost $74 billion of trade and investment, but these figures are as of last year, and during 2021, with our efforts in combating the dramatic effects of COVID-19, this figure is actually should be updated in 2021, and it's even more than this. And we've been active in the energy sector, the manufacturing as well, the general infrastructure, but we have been very active in the past 2 years in the healthcare sector, of course, given the situation we are all in. And we will show you now the figures that we have supported. So in the presentation, you saw that we supported almost 660 million, I think, but now the figure has increased. So you see that it's increasing at a fast pace because member countries are now more in need than before, because they have to restore confidence in the market, and we help the member countries to restore that confidence in the market. So we've supported, obviously, the healthcare sector in the 3 R's that has been described. So in especially the restore and the respond phases, we supported 270 million worth of trade and investment in the healthcare sector, but also in the energy sector, because the countries, after a long year of lockdown, had to restart their economies. So we helped them import the essential energy commodities, and we also participated in mitigating the food security issues in our member countries. So all this amounted so far to $77 million of support in all these areas. So we have 2 segments. Our interventions are targeted in actually towards 2 segments. The first one is the export credit insurance, which actually, so all our transactions involve an OIC component, all of them. So either the transaction is between between 2 OIC member countries, or between an OIC member country and a non-member country. So it means that we are boosting here the export of the member country, or also we can cover transactions involving the investment into our member countries, so from foreign investors. So the next slide will just show you actually the main business lines. I won't go through all of them, but it will be summarized in the products that I will be introducing you to later. So this slide, the key takeaway of this slide is to tell you that we can go up to 20 years of insurance cover. So most of the investors wouldn't go alone in certain jurisdictions up to 20 years. They cannot afford to take that risk. So ISIC is helping them to actually bear that risk while taking actually the risk of a AA3 multilateral institution owned by the Islamic Development Bank. So the main risks that we cover are of political nature and of commercial nature. Commercial nature is just that we are covering against a simple non-payment from an obligor. But the political risks that we cover are the risks that are defined by the international finance community, which are the risk of war and civil disturbance, the risk of expropriation, and the risk of currency transfer restriction. When, for example, an investor wants to repatriate its funds or its dividends into its country, then we can cover him against the restriction of these transfers. And we have also another risk, which is a hybrid risk between the political risk and the commercial risk, which is the breach of contract, the breach of arbitral cancellation of a contract. So when, for example, a sovereign entity cancels a PPA or a PPP with an underlying BOT, for example, agreement, then ISIC can, of course, indemnify the policyholder. So we have a wide range of insurance products that we offer, so of risk mitigation solutions and credit enhancement solutions as well. We won't go through all of them, so we even have more than this, but this is mainly, the main products, and the other ones are actually derivatives of these products. But we will actually explain some of them. So the first one, which is a trade-related insurance product, which is actually the CSTP or the STP. So this insurance product is, the two insurance products are quite the same actually. The only difference is that here we have a typical transaction, for example, an exporter and an importer either in a member country or a non-member country, but generally they are in a member country. So the exporter would export some goods to an importer on open account basis, meaning without any types of securities. And then, of course, if the exporter is not comfortable with the risk of the importer, especially during the COVID pandemic, then the exporter could come to ISIC and request for an insurance to cover ISIC, to cover the exporter against the non-payment default of the importer. So for the STP, it's only one importer, an exporter importing to one importer. But for the CSTP, it's a comprehensive annual whole turnover solution, which means that you would have an exporter exporting to a portfolio of buyers, and ISIC would insure that portfolio on an annual basis. The Dcip policy is one of the popular ones because it's exactly the same actually structure as the previous, described actually in the previous slide. But here there's a security, there's an LC involved. So you would have an importer that is opening an LC into an issuing bank, generally in his country, and then you would have a confirming bank for an exporter that would request ISIC to cover them against the non-payment of the issuing bank because they are not comfortable with the risk of the issuing bank, or they don't have enough capacity because they've done too much by taking the risk of the issuing bank. So we indemnify up to 90% of the loss here, and even when we recover, we would of course give the portion that is owed, that was uncovered, that is owed to the confirming bank. So the next one is an Islamic insurance policy, actually. It's called the Bank Master Policy. It's mainly designed for banks, for Islamic banks, entering into murabaha agreements with some importers. So for example, when an importer wants to import but wants to get a financing for that import, then the Islamic bank would come to ISIC and request for a cover against the default of that importer. So of course it's based on a schedule of payment. So if the schedule is not met, then ISIC would come and indemnify. So this is almost similar to a guarantee because the only event that can make us indemnify is when there's a non-payment due to whatever reason, either a commercial reason or a political reason, of course. And on the previous slide, sorry, so this is mainly for Islamic banks, but we've recently approved to issue this policy for conventional facilities under certain conditions, of course, because they have to, of course, meet the Sharia compliance requirements. So the CPRI is the credit and political risk insurance. So these are a bundle of products that we can segregate into mainly two types of products. So the first ones actually are risk mitigation tools. So like I was like I was explaining before, we have insurance to cover war and civil disturbance. So for example, if you have an investment in a country and then a war pops up or there's a coup or anything, of this nature, and the facilities of your investments are destroyed, then we will compensate you. And same thing, if there's a nationalization, for example, due to expropriation, then we will compensate you. If there's a breach of contract, same thing, we will compensate. If you cannot repatriate your funds, your dividends, then ISIC will compensate you as well. So these are insurance products. So we have a credit enhancement product, which is called the non-honoring of sovereign financial obligation, the NHSFO. Actually, this product is one of the most popular products that we are providing to the banks because it's targeted towards the banks. Because in a typical example, you will see it later, You have a bank that is financing a government, so the government has to be either an entity that is allowed to borrow on behalf of the sovereign state, so generally the Ministry of Finance, and then ISIC would be requested to provide a cover against the default of that government based on a schedule of payment. So now I will give you some case example very quickly. So on the STP, this is a typical example of a specific transaction policy where you would have here stakeholders, one stakeholder that is importing some equipment, so which is Gambia Telecom. So this is in Gambia, in West Africa, a country that has borders, sole borders actually with Senegal. And Huawei actually was supplying some telecom equipment to Gambia Telecom. And Huawei was not comfortable for some reasons with the risk of Gamtel. So they asked ISIC to provide them with an insurance policy in case Gamtel doesn't pay back Huawei. So ISIC, for this transaction, of course, we have internal risk mechanism, and the fact that we are multilateral and that our member countries are in our board of executive director and board of governor as well, we have special relationships like the other sister entities. We have special relationships with the government. So we requested for a government guarantee because we know that when we have a government guarantee, there's, the likelihood of having a claim with us, it's almost, nil. Yeah. We've, in 28 years of history, we've never had any claims on the sovereign side because actually our main role is to avoid, any claims. Of course, it's to indemnify if there's a claim, but mainly it's to avoid. So we don't have that. We don't want that situation to happen. That's why ISIC covered Huawei against the non-honoring of the guarantee of Gambia. And here there's an additional feature to this transaction because Afrexim was financing Gamtel. So Huawei had to assign the insurance cover to Afrexim Bank in case Gamtel doesn't pay them. So I will go very quickly. This one is actually the DCIP policy, documentary credit insurance policy. It's one of the most popular ones as well. It's used in actually trade transactions. So this policy actually here you have an exporter. Actually, the typical transaction involves an exporter in Saudi Arabia and an importer in Ethiopia. But the importer opened an LC, a letter of credit, in CBE, so at CBE, the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia. So Commercial Bank of Ethiopia actually was issuing an LC, and then the bank of the exporter in Saudi Arabia, which is NCB, asked actually for an insurance cover up to 20 million because they couldn't cover the whole 50 million. So ISIC provided this 20 million of insurance cover to NCB to enable actually the transaction to happen. Otherwise, that transaction wouldn't have happened. And you can see here on the bottom right that we have an important internal risk mitigation tool, which is that we share all our exposure with, a majority of our exposure with the private insurance market, mainly the Lloyd's insurance market. So the private sector wouldn't go actually wouldn't cover alone these types of transactions in certain jurisdictions because they don't have the preferred creditor status that we have. So they come and they actually accept almost all the exposure that we provide to them because they know it's safe. So Q&A, yeah, maybe later in the Q&A sessions, yeah. Keep them, no problem. So this one is a typical political risk insurance project. So it's in Mali, in Western Africa. So it's a power plant that has been built, which is the Albatross Energy power plant. The project company is Albatross Energy. They entered into a power purchase agreement with Électricité du Mali, which is the public utility company in Mali. And in this project, there were many investors, and there was one, which is a South African private equity fund, which is AIM, and they requested us to provide them a PRI cover, which is risk against the risk of war, civil disturbance, expropriation, currency transfer restriction, and breach of contract for a period of 7 years. So right now, I'm sure you know that things, some little things are going on in Mali. So there were 2 coups in less than a year, 2 coups d'etat. So in case those coups entailed the destruction of this power plant, then we would be obligated actually to indemnify AIM. So this project is very interesting because in this project, you don't see it here, but ISDB was providing financing and ICD as well was providing financing. So it was really a synergized actually transaction that we did. So the last one is the NHSO, so the non-honoring of sovereign financial obligation in Turkey. So we selected this one because it's very interesting. It's a PPP transaction between investors, financiers, and the Ministry of Health of Turkey for the construction of a hospital in Adana, in the city of Adana. So the project company, which is ADN PPP, was benefiting from financing from SMBC, but SMBC had to ask for, which is a Japanese, obviously, a financial institution, Japanese bank, asked for an insurance cover from ISIC. And we provided them the insurance cover against the non-payment of the availability payments from the sovereign state, which was represented by the Ministry of Health of Turkey. So, and this transaction is for 15 years. So there are rarely banks financing, private banks financing up to 15 years a PPP transaction. So they had to have a type of risk mitigation, actually a credit enhancement tool as ISICs. So lastly, I will just want to say that ISIC is really trade and investment enabler, actually. So we facilitate those transactions, we enable resource mobilization from the private sector because the MDBs alone cannot provide financing to our OIC member countries up to the required level. For example, a review of the African Development Bank for African countries, so most of them, you saw that many of the OIC member countries are in Africa. That review was informing that only 4% of the infrastructure needs in Africa are being financed by the MDBs. So there's a 96% that is needed from the private sector. And this is why ISIC is involved in the transactions, to give comfort to the private sector, either the institutional investors or the financing banks, so that they can go into uncharted territories that they don't know, countries that they don't know. For example, countries that are rated BB or B or even not rated. So they can go to those countries by taking the risk of a AA rated entity owned by the IDB, the Islamic Development Banks are our mother company. All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Very interesting presentation and lots of learnings here, and we can see how much really ISIC is helping the economies in 40 plus or nearly to 50 countries of the OIC member countries. Now we'll have Mr. Khalil Zahabi from ICD. We'll talk about ICD role also in the ecosystem. Thank you. Please.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق محمد بن عبد الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Brothers and sisters, I'm glad to be here to introduce ICD's aspirations for promoting the private sector. This presentation will contain the following 2 sections. Section 1, Introduction to ICD Strategy and Products, and the other section will be Study and New Opportunities in ICDs. ICD is the private sector arm for Islamic Development Bank. established in 1999 with authorized capital of $4 billion and paid up capital $1.3 billion. There are $2 billion available for subscription to the private sector and to the government entities. ICD is rated as A2 by Moody's, A+ by Fitch, and A- by S&P. The role and mandate of ICD for developing the private sector are the following. Number one, developing the financial sector and providing access to SMEs by means of providing financing and investment to the private sector entities, including SMEs that they lack affordable access to source of capital. Also, ICD sets up and strengthens the financial institutes in its member countries to promote the development of Islamic financial sector. Number two, improving infrastructure by structuring and financing transportation, power, energy, healthcare, educational projects. ICD is targeting to improve the enabling environment in member countries. Number three, catalyzing investment in difficult areas. ICD provides sukuk services and possesses asset management capabilities to mobilize resources for the private sector. Connecting firms and investors. ICD connects firms with the investors to help create partnerships between the private sector, companies, and other firms, banks, and international financial institutes. Furthermore, ICD has created a dedicated online platform, we call it the Bridge, that brings together financial institutes in the member countries with an aim to deploy state-of-the-art fintech technology. With 55 member countries, ICD provides access to financing and investment opportunities in some of the fastest growing economies and regions in the world. As Jeddah is the headquarters and hubs around the world, starting with the Middle East. Middle East represents the hub of Islamic capital and finance of the world, with approximately $1 trillion of investment capital available to be deployed. North Africa is the bridge between the vibrant Asian economies, European Mediterranean partnerships, opportunities, and Africa's significant potential for development, as Sub-Saharan Africa is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, where Southeast Asia is the region which represents one of the biggest consumer market as well as one of the fastest growing economies. Last not least, CIS and Europe. The Commonwealth independent states and Europe are the opening economies, improved regulations, and active business environment, as well as attractive investment avenues. Products and services which ICD provides consist of three groups. Number one is the financial sector. Under this sector, there are line of finance directed to FIs, where in their term they finance SMEs. So both financial sector, financial institutes, and the SMEs would benefit directly and indirectly. Banking and non-banking equity. The equity department is actively involved in supporting both banks and non-banks through investing in the capital. Advisory and IBS programs. The advisory department is assisting conventional banks setting Islamic windows, as well converting fully conventional banks to an Islamic institute. Second, the second sector will be the real sector. Under the real sector, we have term finance, BBB, private and public partnership, infrastructure finance, and sukuk. I will elaborate more about sukuk later at the end of this presentation, inshallah. The third sector, asset management and treasury, asset management services, liquidity management services. Since inception, ICD's milestone achievement in operation, $7.1 billion has been approved, a $3.8 billion disbursement with 90% ratio of approval disbursement. 5% is the annual compound growth rate, and more than 500 plus projects has been approved. Where the breakdown of ICD regional and sectorial operations, a large percentage, as you can see, is focused on the financial sector. The growth of the financial institutes, and the reason behind it is to contribute and expand the range of improving and efficiency of the supply of financial services to the private enterprises and SMEs, which results a multiplier effect on economic growth, as well as ICD ensure regionally will diversified portfolio, increased focus on developing and acquisitions of regional expertise in North Africa, Asia, ECA, and Asian region. The strategy and key targets for ICDs are 5 pillars. Number 1, focus. Focus core offering to financial institutes with a clear client segmentation, resulting in a disbursement of $1.8 billion to financial institutes. Innovation. Launching innovation products while building a digital platform, raising and introduce short-term finance products. Number 3, financial sustainability. Discontinuing non-core business lines and growing fee business, resulting in a growth of sukuk and advisory offering. And 4, development impact. ICD serves member countries based on their development needs, resulting in more than 500 million jobs being supported. And a full collaboration between Islamic Development Bank entities. As you can see, three of entities of IDB are represented here, and that would create solidarity, support, and partnership within the group, emerging and achievement of intra-group synergies. The case study. Despite of regulatory challenges, ICD has assisted different sovereigns with their debut sukuk issuance. This includes arranging sukuk issuance for countries including Senegal, Ivory Coast, Mali, and Togo. The dedicated sukuk team has closed sovereign and corporate deals worth a combined of $20 billion. Kiko Sukuk arranger in most of high-grade corporate issuance in a demonstrated of our replacement and distribution capabilities. ICT has co-arranged 6 international sukuk trades for GCC-based issuers during the half year of last year. ICD holds the 4th position of Bloomberg International Sukuk Issuance League table for the 2020. ICD, with its 55 member countries, provide the potential issuers access to a wide investors base in both traditional and developed markets. In this context, ICD is uniquely qualified to advise and facilitate landmark sukuk issuance by the Republic or its corporates. Thank you.
Thanks for these takeaways, and now we are moving from to the very interesting topic about trade finance. So we're going to talk from ITFC, please.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nuruddin Abdo. I am a communications manager at ITFC. and today is my privilege to share a brief on ITFC's role as a catalyst for trade development, more specifically providing integrated trade solutions for member countries. So ITFC, as many of you know, we're a member of ISDB group, and we've been established to advance trade amongst member countries for the OIC member countries. And since our commencement back in January 2008, we've actually approved over 60 billion in trade finance, supporting many different sectors such as energy, food and agriculture. Oh. Should I start over? Supporting energy, food, agriculture, financial, health, also supporting many different regions along the way. It's also worth noting that over the last 2 years, we all know the challenges that we've faced globally. We've continued to step up to the demands of our member countries and provided solutions to help them combat the challenges raised by the health crisis. Also recently, we've actually been ranked #1 in Global Islamic Financing League of Tables, #1 in Bookrunner, and also #1 in MLA. And today, what I want to do is just shed light on these 3 areas as part of our integrated trade solutions. As trade financier, directing trade finance and support to key sectors in member countries. As trade developers, building trade capacity through targeted interventions and flagship programs. And also as pioneers, redefining the role of Islamic finance towards development. Now, I've just previously stated, we've approved over 60 billion in trade finance, and we have a multitude of products that we use to support our clients. So for sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of them, but just go highlight a few. Murabaha financing, this is where ITFC buys commodities from the supplier and then sells them to the beneficiary on a deferred payment agreement. We also have two-step Murabaha, where we provide line of financing to the local banks, which increases our capacity of lending to SMEs and private sector entities, and also Salam financing, where ITFC provides pre-harvest and pre-production financing for farmers and also private sector entities. And we could go through the rest of them later on as well. Now, this is one of our key components. Trade finance is one area, but also we have trade development, because we understand that there's a lot of different support we can provide in terms of capacity building, in terms of technical assistance. So one of the things that we focused on right now is our flagship program. So we have the West Africa SMEs program, where it's designed as a combined capacity building and trade financing program. And what's really the real reason this is here is to offset the financing gap in the region. And then we also have AFIA's program, which is a multi-donor, multi-country, multi-agency program, and basically is to enhance the environment in the Arab region to facilitate international trade and also improve the employment rate, right? Especially for youth and women in the region. And of course, Arab-Africa Trade Bridges, which basically established in 2017, and as it states, is to enhance and increase trade between African and Arab countries in the region. And as ITFC is a pioneer, one of the things is we don't believe one solution fits all kind of a plan. So we have, methods and mechanisms in place to understand the unique needs of our member countries, so that we can provide the appropriate solutions that will help them, overcome the challenges that they're facing. In addition, we also, as a catalyst for Islamic trade, one of the things that we focus on is continuously finding support, whether it's individually. We're also fortunate to have a lot of great partners that we can, that come on board to support and, and help in the needs of our member countries. And also, as stated, providing integrated solutions to respond to the unique needs of our member countries. And lastly, also inspire and pursue Islamic finance as a solution for Islamic world. We believe a lot of organizations will greatly benefit. Also, a lot of countries will benefit if more people took on Islamic financing as a solution to their entities. trade development can drastically improve lives for OIC member countries. And one of the things that we do is, we play pivotal role in 9 of, the SDG goals. And again, for time's sake, we don't really have time to go through all of them and go through all the case studies, but want to focus on number 3, which obviously this is the main one in today's, the world we live in today. Under the, the 3R system, respond, recover, and restart. The first phase, we've actually allocated 300 million to pivot, to fight back the, COVID when it started. This went through, medical, vaccines, also stable food. But then we realized countries need more support, so we've increased it to over 600 million. And then in the recovery phase, again, we've provided 659 million to 9 MCs. Again, this is to also help them with the medical side, and also to provide lending to their banks so that they can provide support to SMEs in the region. And lastly, we had our 10-year strategy. And this actually, happened around 2017. But when COVID hit, we had to come back and say, what, is this still relevant? Can we sustain with this strategy, or do we need something else? And this is where we actually established Strategy 2.0. And with this strategy, it allowed us not only to combat the health crisis that we're facing in the world, but also to see where are the new normal opportunities, what other areas, what other sectors can be enhanced due to the pandemic. So that's, as I mentioned, Strategy 2.0, which is really one of our key strategies, key our focuses going forward. And that is it. Thank you very much. My pleasure. Hold on.
Yeah, okay. I think many of you might have a question in mind. We're going to start the interactive panel now, and then at the end we'll have some, you have the chance to ask any question in mind. We can have it more interactive. So I think we listened to really very inspiring talks from the 3 gentlemen here and the 3 organizations. I think they're doing great for the economy of the OIC countries, and we can see that the great thing I could see here, you can see the 57 countries, they are spread everywhere. So you are talking about different jurisdictions and different areas. Let me ask, start with you, with Isaac, with Rafael. I think COVID really affected the whole ecosystem. Everybody, the whole world will be affected by COVID. And you as your organization, because you're talking about working in risks and so on, it was been very, very important for you to have your strategy, your action, and so on. So would like to know, how you supported the OIC countries in trade and investment in the context of COVID. What did you guys do? And what's your advice as well for future for them?
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Mohammed. Actually, as I think there's an echo. Maybe this one. It's fine now. Yeah. So actually, like the video earlier that we saw was showing, all the entities were part of this SPRP, the Strategic Preparedness Response that we all put in place to help our member countries during these challenging times. So in the context of the 3 Rs, so the respond, restore, and restart. So mainly right now we are, I think, on the restore phase, R2. We've supported, like I showed earlier, more than 700 million for the member countries. Because actually the member countries right now, let's be honest, they are all in need, especially during when the pandemic started. Many of our member countries, which are LDCs, so least developed countries, they were facing some challenges in terms of financing, in terms of importing strategic goods, food, basic needs. So we had internally to devise some solutions. And one of them was the CGF, the COVID Guarantee Facility, that we have put in place with the mother company, so with the Islamic Development Bank. So that facility, actually, it's a joint guarantee facility. So ISDB would guarantee, along ISEC, to provide more capacity to the market, because ISEC was facing a flood of requests from our member countries of financing, of importing strategy like vaccines, building basic infrastructure in the healthcare sector. So we had to help the member countries really, and this is the solution we found. And the other challenge that we had was that the member countries were in need of financing, but of course all the spreads skyrocketed. So the financing cost was very onerous for the member countries in these difficult times. So it was kind of vicious circle. So for that, we also collaborated with another entity of the group, which is the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, ISFD, and we actually structured a very interesting type of guarantee facility, which is actually it's a program called the ISERI. So that program actually enables our policyholder, so the policyholders being either the banks or the exporters, to get an insurance cover, okay, with discounted rates. So ISFD was subsidizing the premium that we were charging to the policyholders, knowing that that premium would be eventually charged to the member country. So the member country was able to import, some food commodities, essential food commodities, vaccines, other medical equipment, at a cheaper rate than they would have imported in the market. So these were the main two initiatives that we've developed, and the ISERI right now, I think the level of approval is at 270 million. Yeah, with a limited grant. The grant was 1 million, and we were able to support 270 million. So you can see the leverage effect here. That is very big. Thank you.
Very inspiring. I could see here that you done collaboration with Solidarity with other sister company or organization. I think this is a great thing, and I think that the speed is very important, the agility, because it just came suddenly. Then you have to be agile in responding to this to this pandemic. So that's very great. Thanks a lot. If we ask ICD, Khalil, you have been talking about the, many of the products you guys are having, and many areas as well you are supporting economy, finance, and others. Would like to know from you what is the product and the services being used in OIC countries, and because you could see there is different jurisdictions and areas. If there is one area it has more products than the other one, or a specific product go to one area than the other one, and so on, from an ICD point of view.
Thank you, Mohammed. Actually, ICD has three groups of products. The financial sector, the real sector, and the asset management and treasury sector. Excuse me. Under the financial sector, we have LOF, line of finance, which is dedicated to the financial institutes, and, excuse me.
You better take water. So please.
Apologies.
It's okay.
I'm fine, thank you. So, the mask.
You should be okay.
Line of finance, which is it's dedicated to the financial institutes, and through using the financial institutes to reach to the SMEs within the member countries. And of course, we have the banking and non-banking equities. The equity department at ICD is dedicated to participate directly in the capital of the corporates and even FIs entities within the member countries. And we have the real sector, term finance, and Sukuk, along with the PPP, private and public partnership. All the products, Brother Mohammed, are really dedicated to all member countries 55, where I believe the mostly is used is the line of finance, LOF, because that would support direct and indirect the financial sector and the private sector within the member countries.
Oh, great, thanks. So the financing part is really for the member country is the biggest one. Thank you. Thanks a lot. We'll move to Brother Nuruddin. We talk about trade finance and trade development. This is the two areas really. I think it's a big area. I could see the numbers as well. It's a very big number you guys have done investing, supporting member countries. Would like to know more from you about these products and services provided by ATFC. What kind of products and services are being there, from a trade finance point of view, which one is more, which one is less, and so on.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. So as we all know, like over the years, we've always provided a lot of trade finance. But then what we realize is that, there's the big challenge is the development side, especially when it comes to capacity building. And, a lot of the countries that we work with, we realize there's a lot of businesses that have the potential, that have, the right products, the right services, but unfortunately, they don't have the financing. But on the other side, the banking sector, they don't have the right mechanism to evaluate and assess which SMEs, might be, a great opportunity, which SMEs they should lend to, and which ones are actually risk. So for us is to provide the technical assistance, as stated earlier, to provide the trade building, trade activities to ensure that when we are lending funds, this actually make an impact in the right areas in the countries that we're supporting. Yep.
So that's very interesting. I think the development, as you said, it's very important. But now about knowing the country itself, what about the analysis of this country, because they're going to invest in different countries and so on. What about, I think it comes to the risk as well.
Yeah, so now one area as a communications department, as you know, we focus more on the visibility. So I would be more than happy to, contact with the right person that would be answered. But from our side is to shed light more on our services, on the impact that we're making, and really, show a lot of the inactive countries, and this is really a big focus of us in 2022, to become more active so that they too can also benefit from the trade finance and products that I've shared earlier, also the trade development programs that we have, available right now. My pleasure.
We'll go back here to ISIC as well, how ISIC is working towards achieving a balance between member countries while managing risks, because I think this is one of a very, very important point here,
Yes, it's a very good question because, when COVID started, you had many experts here and there, and, now with social media, you have even more experts, but even the serious ones were predicting that a great catastrophe, because of course, everything shut down. We've never experienced something like this in the whole century. So as you rightly mentioned, risk was elevated, very, very elevated. So internally, we adopted some interim underwriting and risk guidelines because, of course, we have to safeguard our institution, the basic fundamentals of the institution, which is managing risk. So we put some guidelines in place. But let's be honest, our member countries, it's during these times that they mostly need us. They need us the most during, when there are turbulence and when people are running away from dealing with them. So we had to help them. Especially the countries that were mostly in need, which were the LDCs. So we didn't shy away from that, even though the private market was a little bit reluctant. But like I was saying, with our preferred creditor status, they know our relationship with those countries. So we had to step up and to help our member countries. So the other challenge was that we had to help them without increasing the premium and the overall financing cost. So that's why we use the ICERI, we are using the collaboration with ISFD, we are using also the collaboration with IDB to support the member countries. And you can see the figures are there. So we supported more than 700 million. And actually, ISIC has never been active, has never been more active now during COVID than in the past. So our business insured has increased during COVID, which shows you that we didn't shy away from taking risk. We took even more risk, but the risk was calculated. So that's why thus far the claim ratio is at an acceptable level, given all the circumstances we've been through. Thank you.
That's great. And I think it's very important here that this year you didn't increase your premium. It's the spirit of Islam. You are an Islamic development bank, so you're helping people in need. So I think that's a great thing. It's not to balance the risk while making sure you don't give burden to the countries as well at the same time. Brother Khalil, okay now. So I think we come to a very important question here, because SMEs has been really, it's a very important sector for all countries. OIC countries, other countries, even more than 90% of businesses is SMEs really. So, and this is the sector I believe ICD is focusing in a big extent there. I would like to know from you how you are supporting SMEs in OIC countries.
Yes, yes, Brother Muhammad. Of course, SMEs, they are the targeted for the development and supporting financially within member countries. And ICD, to do that, we have we have 119 banks. We have even established and helped take part in many financial institutes within the member countries as a partners, as a shareholders, to support directly and indirectly SMEs. As a rule of ICD would directly support the financial institutes in the member countries, and the financial institutes themselves, they will transfer this support to SMEs. But definitely the SMEs are targeted by SMEs for support and development. Thank you.
I think I noticed even many of these events done by ICD globally about SME support, and I think that's one of the great things here we can see. I think maybe the financing part which you showed was big. It goes many of these to the SMEs as well.
Definitely. And actually what we have done, to make the distance even shorter between all the member countries, we created this online platform, which we call the Bridge. And the Bridge is very essential that, we're bringing all financial institutions all together, okay, so they can see the available supports for all member countries.
We'll come to the question later about technology, because you guys are doing a great job as well. Mr. Nuruddin, here you know about what's future plan for trade development, for you guys, and flagship program being offered by ITFC? Because I think there is more demands coming to you actually, because trade is very, very important for all member countries.
Yes. Hello? All right, there we go. Yes, so one key thing we're working on is to get more countries to become more active. This is really a big part of our Strategy 2.0 program. And, and we feel like there are a lot of entities, a lot of organizations, a lot of countries that will benefit. So we have targeted 5 countries in 2022. In addition to that, we're also working on more on the trade development side, as stated previously, providing more support, providing more education and more tools, more resources, so that we can have businesses that are in place to benefit from what we have, and to ensure trade flow through the trade development side that we're providing, supporting that sector.
But you believe there will be more demand for you in the future from?
Absolutely.
Demand is going, because even after COVID, I believe when people see that how much you are supporting them.
Yes, and a big focus
like
of yes, especially in the SMEs and the private sector. This is a big focus of ours, because we understand, as Rafael stated earlier, right now we're in we've finished the respond, now we're in the restore side. And part of restoring economies is to support the small businesses, because we know those are the backbones of a lot of the economies. So by providing a lot of support, lending to local banks so that they can facilitate more trade and cash flows to these small businesses, I think that's definitely one area that we know is definitely going to make a big impact in the countries that we support.
Linked Let me add something here. How is technology? Because I believe you guys are doing a great in technology as well. You know, the use of technology, platform and systems. I believe this is something happening at
Yes, yes. Obviously, as you know, in ITFC, we're always innovating and we're always trying to enhance ways that we can not only, you know, communicate our message, but also facilitate a lot of the trades in a much smoother ways. So digitalization is a big part of our strategy 2.0, and certainly one area that we're focusing a lot on, you know, in the coming years. My pleasure.
Just to let you know that after the event here, after this panel, we'll have, you know, a break outside. So please stay here. Make sure that we're going to be there discussing with the team as well. So I'd like to have it more interaction. So let us, you know, go to ISIC again, you know, and you know, I could see from your presentation you've done great, and I would like you maybe to tell us more about success stories happened by ISIC, where and how, and give us some more insights about that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so let me maybe speak about some transactions we closed this year, last year. We've already in 2022, but we are closing transactions in 2022. So last year, the first transaction we closed was in Senegal, and this one was an interesting one in the structure because actually it was a project to rehabilitate wastewater collector pipe in the city of Dakar. So the pipe is underground, so it's collecting all the waste from the households and from the businesses, and then, you know, it transferred it to the outside city in some specific facilities. So that project, the pipe was 7 years old, not really well maintained. There was subsidence, so some holes, posing some threats of, you know, human threats, actually, some building collapsing. So, you know, we felt that it was urgent, and the government, actually, with us, felt that it was urgent to actually deal with that issue, especially that there was pollution emanating from the wastes, actually. And, you know, they already have COVID. They don't want, you know, an additional problem. Yeah. So we did that transaction in a fast-track process. And why I'm speaking about it is that the structure, and this is what you were mentioning. You were saying that it's good to see that the ISDB group is agile, you know, responding quickly. Because here we had a challenge. The challenge was that the financing was of the bank financing, so it's public information, was Société Générale, Côte d'Ivoire, and Senegal, so both banks. So since they are local banks, they were financing in local currency, so in CFA franc. But ISEC doesn't cover, it's not allowed, actually, as per our operation regulations. We are not allowed to cover local currency transactions. We cover only hard currency, euro or dollars. So we had to find a way with the bank to cover that transaction because, you know, the country was in need. So we devised a solution with the bank where we could cover a local financing by having a guarantee from the mother company in France in euro. Okay. So we would counter guarantee that guarantee in euro so that it will tick the eligibility criteria. So we supported, that's how we supported that transaction. And, you know, it contributed to a lot of SDGs. All our transactions, all our projects do. So it created jobs. You know, it reduced pollution, and yeah. So maybe I will speak about a second transaction that we've done in Cameroon. That transaction was about, and it's very dear to us, to ISEC, because it was a transaction. Actually, the project was about the construction of a medical facility for people of determination. So people of determination So that facility actually is not only a hospital. It's a hospital because, you know, with the handicaps and all the accidents that they were having, they had to be treated. So they are treated in that facility, but they are not only treated, they recover in that facility. They have classes to learn some jobs so that when they fully recover, they can go out and have a decent job. So that, because, you know, in these countries, generally, when the people of determination have issues, they have to fly to go to Europe or maybe to Morocco or to even Egypt. So countries that are more developed. So that medical center actually is the unique one in that region. So it will not only help the Cameroonian, which is a member country, but also the member countries that are, next to Cameroon, which are OIC member countries as well. So that's how we covered, transactions.
I think I'm happy to see two great examples, and one is humanitarian as well, because it's something for human. It's not only transaction and commercial, but being in human needs, it's great, inshallah.
Exactly. So this is what, of course, we have to help the economy of our member countries by boosting their exports, by helping them import very strategic investments, goods, and attract also investments. But we also have, it's in our mission actually to help the social living of our member countries and our fellow brothers and sisters in the OIC.
I think just being in Islamic banking and finance for more than 2 decades, I think this is a great thing we're really happy with, because at-ta'awun, or being cooperating and helping each other, is a great thing. This is the spirit of all these organizations, to be there, not only for the sake of making money, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to ICD, because this is a very near to my heart thing about digitalization, because being from technology and fintech, and you guys doing great from this point of view. I could see, I meet your people for many events about fintech, about digitalization, and what are you doing here from this point of view in digital transformation, fintechs, innovation, and so on?
It's true, Brother Muhammad, that digitalization is very important, and for ICD, and ICD is very keen on this matter. Actually, as I said, ICD has created the bridge, which is online platform, and the idea of it, which is connecting the global financial institutes, with all together. By doing that, ICD aim to deploy a state-of-art fintech technology to accelerate knowledge sharing between member countries and those entities, and of course for specific deals for boosting national economies. And that's what this platform will create awareness, link knowledge, productivity, delivery for all participants on the platform.
And I believe this you are working across all countries, I believe, in this.
Yes.
With a center, I think, in Jeddah and other places like hubs or something like that for the technology.
And we are about to call, it's open for everybody, any financial institute worldwide, globally, to participate on this platform. The idea is connecting all these FIs, together on one line, online platform.
I think the Islamic fintech, what we call it, is very important. I'm glad that I have a report which is done by IMF recently about Islamic fintech, and I think this Islamic social finance is very, very important, and even the Islamic banking, Islamic finance. I think ICD and ICDB member organization, they're doing great in this site, and I think I would invite all of you just to look at these reports. I think there is a great things happening here about Islamic fintech and fintech innovation in Islamic banking and finance. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Brother Nuruddin here, we come to you, and regarding, we talk about COVID with other colleagues. Would like to know, from you, I think you showed us some numbers. Would like to know from you as well more insights about how did you support the countries in COVID, and how you are supporting in future as well.
Yes, the key word is the future, because unfortunately we're still talking about it today. I think the important thing and the first step towards challenging with any crisis is to stabilize the situation, right? Provide the basic needs so that you can at least have opportunity to build on the better things later. So that's why initially we've provided with 300 million, and this is for the medicine, medical devices, stable food. And obviously we didn't know the situation at the time. We didn't understand what was happening. And once we kind of got a grasp of it, we understood there was more resources needed. So we've increased the capacity, the amount that we've provided. Now we're in the respond. That was a respond. Now we're in the restart phase. So again, now we're continuing to. I think a lot of people kind of accepted COVID as what it is, but they're looking for ways to build around it, to still continue life and still to grow their economies and make sure that they're able to provide for their families. So that a lot of the, for us to do that is to focus a lot on the SME sector, making sure that businesses have funds, businesses are not shutting down or not being held back by lack of financing. So we're working with a lot of the local banks in the regions that we support, making sure that they have the ability to extend financing support to deserving businesses. So this is really what our plan is, in the coming years, and I think it'll allow us to continue to create impact in those regions.
I think if you are able to excel during COVID, then you have the biggest chance to excel after COVID, because I think this was a big pressure on all the entities, all organizations, and everybody. And now I think we learn a lot from COVID. And now we are able really to do even better in the future. So I think that's a very interesting analogy as well.
Yes, absolutely. And also giving opportunities to people who haven't had it in the past, like, such as women entrepreneurs, and giving platforms to youth, because, with COVID, a lot of people went digital, and that made it really easy for the world to connect and communicate. So a lot of new opportunities came up. So for us to be able to leverage on that is also important.
Thank you. Even today we have many audience online. We didn't think about it long time back, It's only physical. Nobody, now we have many people, more than number here, we have big number online. So that's a great thing, And this is where COVID and this, pandemic, teach us many great things. And now we are even more agile and more ready for future. I will open the floor for questions here now. And I think our colleague here has some questions, please.
Testing, yes, you can hear me. Okay, first of all, I thank you, Muhammad, Rafael, Khalil, and Nuruddin for this amazing information. I learned a lot. Okay, I have one question for Rafael about the LC payment and the insurance. Yeah, what I understand, because I'm not really financial guy, so my question is, what I understand that when two entity, like a bank, like I said, exporter or importer, there's a bank in the middle, and if they do some LC payment, then they are worry-free, because the goods will not go to the other side unless the payments are fully transferred to the other side. Then, so there's what I understand is when you do LC payment, the security for the payment and the goods will be 100%. But so what I didn't understand, what is the added value to have ISIC in the middle? This is my question, but if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Actually, like I was saying, banks, they have internal risk management guidelines. So it's not a risk for the importer. You're right. I mean, the one importing, the party importing, so the SME, for example, importing, is not bearing the risk. The party exporting, sorry, is not bearing the risk. The one which bears the risk here in an LC transaction is the confirming bank, so the bank of the importer, confirming that the LC, the payment, will be received. So in case, because an LC can default, actually. So an issuing bank might, after the end of the credit period, might not be able to honor its obligations because the bank just defaulted. There was a financial crisis, for example, in the likes of the 2008 crisis, and then the bank defaults. They cannot, at the end of the 30 days, they don't have money to pay. So ISIC would step up and pay the confirming bank. So this is the added value. So this is strictly in terms of risk. Now the banks, as you know, they have internal guidelines. They have Basel III, which is, regulatory criteria, actually regulatory requirements that, the banks, the regulator imposes on the banks. So they shouldn't take, a significant amount of risk without mitigating it. So the way to mitigate the risk by doing more, without limiting itself, is to provide, to get an insurance from ISIC, for example. Yeah, because ISIC is rated AA3 by Moody's, And, you know, for example, the example that I gave earlier, CBE, Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, I don't know exactly what is the rating of Ethiopia. I think it's B maybe. So it's B. You see how many notches the bank is you know, gaining. And if we cover 90%, they are only exposed 10% on that bank. Yeah, and despite the fact that they have 10%, they benefit from the halo effect of ISIC, you know. So especially that when the bank is sovereign, then, you know, we can, our CEO can call, you know, the minister and tell him, you know, there's an issue and it shouldn't go bankrupt, find solutions. Or at least, even if it goes bankrupt, then pay us first and then, you know, pay the rest.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Is there any other? Yes. Thank you.
First of all, gentlemen, thank you for the presentations. They were very informative. Just a comment, you guys really like your abbreviations. IDB, ICC, I mean, there was too many of those. But my question to you guys is, it was inspiring to me to hear that it's a priority for your companies to promote Islamic banking not to conventional banks, whether they want to just add them as an add-on to conventional banking or to fully switch from conventional to Islamic. My question is, how are you doing that? How are you approaching them? How are you doing that? That was my question.
I think ICD about the conversion from conversion to Islamic banking.
Yeah, that would be based on advisory basis. Most of the conventional banks, they start with Islamic windows. So what ICD does, they support those conventional bank fully, okay, with the procedures, all documentations of all needed to set up that Islamic window. On top of that, even ICD would support the financial bank by introducing the mudaraba, musharaka, direct loans, you know, directly to the bank to provide, you know, and to create an Islamic financial, you know, for the entity. This is in terms of window like opening window Islamic. If it's full conversion, then ICD will create A to Z, okay, and support those conventional banks in all, as I said, same thing, documentation and implementation, and on top of that, even like, you know, given line of credits, you know, to facilitate more, like, you know, ease for the conventional bank. And we actually, what ICD done, they have, we have created window Islamic and converted banks, more than 100 institutes and within our member countries, mostly in CIS, the Commonwealth Independent States. Thank you.
I think this is a very good question, and very happy to add here because I'm very honored that the first conversion of a bank from conversion to Islamic, National Bank of Sharjah in 2002, I was part of the team done the conversion. And I think later on we have another one, which is Emirates Islamic Bank nowadays. It used to be another conventional bank. And then nowadays you can see many, you know, the wave is happening everywhere else. Organizations like ICD got the expertise, you know, which is they can deploy people, which is they done it before many times. Then they can help you out really to be able to do it in shorter time, and you are able to help give the expertise and so on. And I think the CIS region is a great because there is also a good you know, increase or adoption of Islamic finance banking in CIS region. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Ram from Syria Pavilion. Syria is undergoing like major changes right now in terms of digitalization, the Islamic economy, and transformation towards a more Islamic banking and these things. I have like maybe if there are any plans to bolster these efforts towards these transformations from your organizations, maybe from Mr. Nuruddin's perspective, if there is any answer. Thank you.
Hello? So just to make sure I understood your question correctly, if Syria is part of the plan in terms of supporting them in these initiatives? Yes. Now, as I've shared earlier, you know, we are, a big part of our project going forward is a sovereign mapping plan, which basically we're bringing more countries under our portfolio, but we're doing it in steps. So we're starting with 5 countries. and then continue to add them year by year. It's a 5-year project. So from what I understand, from what I can tell, as if right now we're only starting with the initial 5, but would Syria be part of our plan? Certainly. I mean, I think in the future this is something we'd look into and see, how we can be more supportive in that part as well. So yeah, so that's really, what I would share. So we are supporting a lot of different countries that we've never worked with before at a large capacity. So hopefully Syria could be one of them in the future. The 5 countries for this year: Nigeria, Benin, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and there's always one that I'm sure could be Kazakhstan, yes. Yeah. CIS region, yeah. And Africa, right. And like I said, we're transitioning, we are going to be transitioning to other countries as well. So hopefully, like I said, we can support a lot more new countries that will be able to benefit from our services. My pleasure.
Any more questions? Yes, one here, please. It's good to have a lady question here.
Hi, okay. I wanted to ask, does IEC collaborate with other organizations and countries outside the OIC?
Thank you very much. Yes, we do indeed, actually. And this is where we are the most impactful, I would say. So, MDBs, MDBs, it's Multilateral Development Bank. So you was asking about the acronyms. So I will try not to use the acronyms anymore. So the Multilateral Development Banks, we collaborate with them. So there's, for example, I have in mind one transaction we've done in Egypt, actually. So it was to provide, there was a bank, a multilateral bank, which is Afrexim Bank. So it's the Exim Bank of Africa, was providing financing to the National Bank of Egypt.
Okay.
Yeah, so in order to provide that financing, they needed a risk mitigation tool, or actually a credit enhancement from ISIC. So we provided them with the credit enhancement, which is the non-honoring of sovereign financial obligation of a state-owned enterprise, because NBE was considered to be a state-owned enterprise, and this has facilitated the agriculture sector because not only the agriculture sector, actually, the SME sector in general, because the money was then used to on-lend to the SME, so to many SMEs. So this is one, of the examples that I have in mind. We have also many other examples with MIGA. MIGA is the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency from the World Bank. So we actually collaborate together because MIGA as well provides insurance and guarantees. So we collaborate in the form of reinsurance or co-insurance arrangements, meaning that if, for example, we go, or MIGA goes to a certain jurisdictions and to a certain jurisdiction, and the investment amount is very high, and that they don't have enough capacity, then they will call us if the country is a member country, so that we can be with them in that country. And sometimes, since we have a limited number of member countries, 48, and MIGA has almost 200. Then sometimes we even know some countries, we have a special relationship even more often, I would say, than MIGA does. So that's why, they contract our services, and we do this together. And it's very good because when we collaborate with multilateral organization, this is, like I was saying earlier, this is where we are more impactful, because the rates that we can provide are sometimes subsidized because they are grants from the financing part. So the countries benefit, so the OIC member countries benefit from this low financing part, and the fact that, of course, we know that there are other multilaterals in the project, so no one would default with the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and the Islamic Development Bank together, for example, in a project. So it would be very, not advisable to do that. So that's when we can be able to provide long tenors up to 20 years with rates that are very attractive to the member countries. Of course, the rates, when I talk about the rates, I'm talking about the premium rates that we charge for the insurance, because of course we have to eat and to to earn a living, but we do it, we are a multilateral organization. We are not profit driven, so we do it really like to help to actually retribute the private market, because the private market, they need, like I was showing earlier, they need their share because they are covering with us these transactions. So we try to make it attractive for them, but also for the member country, because the premium rate is generally ultimately charged to the member country that is borrowing or importing.
I think it's very important here to comment as well when we have another question. Is Islamic Finance Organization is not a charity organization, They do profit, they make money, but the right way, more transparent. They take care of people, so it's win-win for everybody. Money is for everyone, not only like so you have in other societies. Some people they make lots of money, other people don't make money at all. So the Islamic finance, yes, it does make money. It's a profitable organizations, but the way they do it is much better than others. Inshallah. We have another question here.
Does IEC activities varies from one region to another?
Yes, so yes, actually, because the question is a bit tricky, because I wouldn't say that our intervention, of course our intervention varies, but it depends on the needs of the countries. So a country, for example, like the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, or Saudi Arabia, wouldn't need much, the services of ISIC compared to another country, because of course we do business in Saudi Arabia and UAE, of course, as well. But countries that are least developed would, of course, need the most actually our support, because they are already it's already challenging for them to get financing, for example. So those countries, for example, countries some countries in the MENA region, some in sub-Saharan Africa, would greatly need our help, and that's why in terms of figures it varies, of course, and it depends. A year, there are more transactions in the MENA regions. Another year there are more transactions in sub-Saharan Africa. But I would like to make this clear. All our member countries, the 48 member countries, can benefit from our cover. So, for example, even if it's not a sovereign state, but for example, in Saudi Arabia, if there's an SME that needs, to import some goods, but a company in China needs a risk mitigation tool, then of course we can provide that. So we help all the business lines. We help all the sovereigns as long as there's a developmental impact component in that transaction.
That's good. So based on the need, exactly. The member countries. Please have one question here. Yeah, we can hear.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. Thank you, gentlemen, for this fruitful presentation. My question to Mr. Raphael. You mentioned in the presentation that you can ensure or cover the risk of the money restrictions in some African countries. The restriction, money restriction, it's one of the biggest challenges in Africa. So I need to know what kind of facilitation you can provide to someone, because I know so many investors, they're stuck in Africa. They invest millions there, and now they are not be able to take the money out, or at least to take it out they will lose 15%. Sometimes I hear 20% to take it out. So what kind of facilitation you can do in this situation?
Okay. So actually there are two angles in your question, because there's the fact that investors cannot repatriate their funds, their dividends, into their country, and there's the fact as well that investors can repatriate, but it's the amount of the rate at which they have to repatriate is too high. So for the second one, the rate, this we don't have a control. This you can go to any commercial bank and get a swap, or any other derivative to try and have to mitigate this issue. But for the first one, the fact that because of a political action or not enough foreign reserves, etc., you cannot repatriate your funds, then there's a product for it that we actually offer, which is the currency transfer restriction insurance, which is, we consider it as a political risk insurance, so that you can, if you get it from us, then of course there are some challenges in many countries, not only Africa, but even, sometimes the foreign reserves are too, tight, or, there's a civil disturbance that can happen and you cannot repatriate your funds, as simple as that. So in that case, since we have special relationships with the member country, we would contact the relevant authorities, either the Ministry of Finance, the central bank, to put us in contact with the central, to try and resolve the situation first. So it's a loss avoidance mechanism that we will prioritize. But if that is, and we have a limited time for that, we have a waiting period in our insurance, which is around 6 months, for example. If, after these efforts, it's not possible, you are still not able to repatriate your funds, then of course we will indemnify you. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have a question here. Can you use the mic?
My question is to Nuruddin. Who is a typical trade finance client for you? And the second question is, you have mentioned that there are 5 countries which have been targeted for 2022. Are these 5 countries taking 100% of your allocation, or is it a certain percentage? And what is going to be the balance, if there is, to be utilized for other countries? And what is the criteria by which you have selected 5 countries for 2022? For example, you mentioned Benin. Why not Mali or Mauritania? Just to understand more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. The questions are getting harder and harder. Interested. Okay.
Answer as much as you can.
Yes. So I believe the first question is, who would you consider to be your criteria as a client? I mean, we've worked with governments, local and private businesses, SMEs, farmers. So I think it varies from country to country, sector to sector, depending on where we feel we can make the biggest impact based on the country's needs. So for example, we just did the groundnut project in Senegal, where we've worked with farmers. As you know, big challenges for farmers has been the funding between creating and selling and waiting for them to get paid. So we were able to eliminate that by providing the funds up front. So small things like that can make a huge impact. So again, we have a list of people we work with, but now the second question was the country. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, the second question you mentioned, what is the criteria? That's a very good question, and we do have a team that specializes on this. So as a member of a communications team, we're kind of like in the last stroll where we're told, okay, these are the countries that we selected, and here is what we need to do as a communications team to promote it. But I believe it's a lot of us, who falls under our mandate, right? Areas that where we can enhance trade and improve lives, and ultimately that is what we look into. I mean, obviously, a lot of these countries we, first analyze if there's an opportunity for us to make an impact, if there's a way for us to support, trade development, trade financing to enhance that region, that country. So there's a lot of things that the team looked into, but in terms of the specifics, I can definitely connect you with the right members that will be able to give you more specific details on it. And I think that was... When you say percentage...
you said you'll be targeting 5 countries for 2022.
Yes.
So is it going to be everything, 100% of the allocation going to these 5 countries, or there will be...
How much you invest in these?
Other than these 5 countries,
for 2022, no. I mean, I think obviously we have a specific budget for new countries, because these are new countries. We still have other countries that we've been working with and we'll continue going to be working with in this range. But there is a percent, I don't think it's going to be 100%. Again, when I connect you with the right people, they will be able to give you the specific answers. But I believe this is, there's a percentage allocated to these new countries, again, based on their needs, based on, the demands that each country has.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
We have one more here, and then we come back to you. Thank you, team. Can you open the mic? I think it is on.
Thank you, team. It was very informative presentation. I'm from India Exim Bank, and we represent India. And India is one of the largest trading partner with many of the OIC's countries. So we interact with ICIEC, but I would like to hear from the other two organizations on how non-member institutions like us can associate with ICD or ITFC in facilitating trade between India and the member countries of OIC.
I think we answered this for here.
Yeah.
So we need to know from, it's very interesting question actually. So from ICD and IFC, how do you deal with non-member?
Actually, it will be through a member, entity from the member country. So it has to be allocated when, if you like dealing, for instance, with Saudi Arabia, you have some transport or some commodity to be transferred. So it will be handled as it's from Saudi Arabia to be as a member country.
So one member country, then you can deal with one member country with other countries.
Yeah, of course.
The same way I think ISIC explained between what happened in Egypt and other country outside. So
yeah, exactly. So for us, I mean, I think you are very familiar with us. So for us, it's straightforward. For example, if there's a member country that needs strategic investment in the country, either roads or hospitals, and the contractor is an Indian contractor, then Exim India would provide financing. So generally is EPC plus F. So would provide financing to the member country. So the member country would be the borrower of that financing, and ISIC would simply cover that financing. So to help actually the strategic investments in the country.
So the client will be from the member country, not from the
yes. So in the same will be for ICD as well. So you're going to deal with the member country will be dealing with another company or a country to help them out, and then you're going to finance or something like that in the middle. That should be fine. Okay. Nuruddin, you have anything about from ITFC? I thought as well, I know that this is too technical sometimes, but
again, there'll be someone more specializes this for ITFC in terms of dealing with non-member countries.
But I think the message here, which is I think the question here we'll talk about, that the OIC countries are working with other countries, because I think we are global, Today you cannot just be in a closed network and deal with yourself only. Yes, you promote yourself among yourself, the trade and everything, but at the same time you are able to deal with the World Bank, with I am part of AMF with the Technology Group, we deal with IMF and others in the technology part. So I think this is happening the same here. Okay, I think we have a question here. Khalas, this is, you are okay. Any question here in the back side? Someone was thinking to add anything? We are all done. I think it's really interesting discussion. I really learned a lot from it as well, and I would like to thank you for being here for this almost 2 hours, and for the great discussion and insights from the panelists. Would like join me to thank the panelists and for them. Thanks a lot for you. And hopefully we see you in the next event. I think they have someone in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. It would be great to be there as well. Hopefully, inshallah. Thanks a lot. Very much appreciated. We need a group photo. Can the photographer here? Yes, we need a group photo. We'll, inshallah, alaykum wa rahmatullah. We'll have a group photo, right? This one is okay? Thank you. Shukran. Thank you. Thanks a lot. We have a break here. Please just join us in the break for coffee, and just if you need to discuss something around. أهلا بيك يا أخي.
الله يخليك ربنا يخليك الحمد لله اديتك الكارت بتاعي
ما مضبوط معك.
اهلا بك.
هي شاشة على الإخبارية. حابين ناخذ من حضرتك كلمة دقيقة واحدة
نعم.
60 ثانية بشكل مختصر وسريع. وحتكون بما انك محاضر رئيسي
باللغة العربية.
نعم. بفضل اللغة العربية وبما ان حضرتك محاضر رئيسي تكلمنا بشكل عام عن أهمية هاي الندوة خصوصا اللي تقام في الجامعة المصرية ونتكلم عن الاستثمارات.
نعم. نعم.
تفضل يا أستاذ محمد.
الله يخليك خليني بس اجيب التليفون. شوف لك الاسم بالعربي.
اسم ايه بالضبط؟
محمد رشدي.
لا بالعربي.
OIC countries منظمة التعاون الإسلامي خلينا نشوف.